And what should the U.S. do about the Honduran migrant caravan? Hello, and welcome to The Square Circle. I'm your host, Heather Godwin. Joining us today are political reporter James Rosen, Michael Shindler of Young Voices, and Kelley Vlahos of The American Conservative. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have you here tonight. Italy, a massive caravan of migrants from Honduras is on its way to the U.S. border. Here again is NBC News.
The caravan started in Honduras, then slogged through Guatemala, and now faces a grueling journey to the U.S. border. Julio Garcia and his year-old son are from Guatemala.
What do you say to many people in the United States who look at this as an invasion?
These people are hard-working people. They want to go over there and work.
Now, multiple government sources in the U.S. and Central America tell NBC News they're tracking a new caravan taking shape in El Salvador, planning to begin another trek next week.
Michael Shindler, what do you make of this?
Well, I make two things of this. Honduras is not that great. Is not that great a place to live in, and America is. Now, it's very flattering. There's a caravan full of thousands of people on its way to the United States because America is really that really great. But one of the reasons that America is great is because we have good immigration procedures in place. We have to make sure that we know who somebody is before we let them in. So as much as I'd like to say to these folks, hey, come on right in, I can't. I have to say, despite my humanitarian sympathies, like President Trump, hey, go back home and apply. Or if you're really fleeing horrific conditions, then apply for asylum in Mexico. Mexico is not that bad. People in the U.S. go to vacation there. It's really not that horrifying of a place to stay for asylum.
James Rosen, what's your response?
Well, I think this does involve politics. I was asked earlier whether the bombs involve politics. I think this does involve politics. This is these folks, and I'm sure they're being organized by leaders of pro-immigration leaders, and they're trying to force the issue with President Trump. They're trying to see what he will do, and I think it's an interesting question. But by the way, a lot of Americans, thousands, go to vacation in Honduras. It's a beautiful place.
Just got to know which part of Honduras to go to.
Same with Mexico. But at any rate, we'll see. I mean, during the campaign, President Trump left it up in the air whether he would use troops. With the kind of implication of possible violence, and I think he mentioned troops again today or yesterday. Yep. So we'll see. I mean, in a way, they're trying to call his bluff, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Kelley Vlahos, what do you think?
Well, leaving the politics aside for a second, I just feel like we need to get at the root and branch of this issue. These people aren't just coming here to make trouble for Trump. Mm-hmm. They are living in horrific conditions in these countries. I mean, if you look at each one of them, their murder rates are sky high. Why? Gangs and drugs. And this all goes back to the war on drugs, of which we are a huge part of. We not only buy the drugs, consume the drugs, deal the drugs, but then we turn around and militarize the effort to get rid of them. And so we've been giving millions of dollars, billions of dollars to these countries to combat drugs, which is just fed their corruption, made it a police state in each of these countries, fueled the gangs there. And so now we're surprised that people are trying to get into our country. I mean, this is a serious issue, and I feel like, yes, Trump has politicized it, the left has politicized it, politicians have politicized it, but these people are suffering, and they're coming here for a reason. And they want to apply for asylum. They probably won't get it. They'll probably be turned away. But I feel like until we're ready to actually address the root cause of why these people want to come here so bad, I feel like we're going to be here in another 10 years talking about the same subject.
Well, Honduras, from what I understand, has the highest murder rate per capita of any country in the world.
It's no joke.
And that's a big statement. And it looks to me like a lot of desperation there. And what can we do with them when they hit the border? We've already got these detention camps set up. And, are we prepared in any way to deal with or process these people? Do any of you have a thought on that?
Well, I mean, I think we have famously, they've been paid a lot of attention to under President Trump. I mean, we do have detention centers. I mean, people do wait in limbo, for years. Going back years, people have waited in limbo long periods of time to get into the country while their asylum requests were considered. Cubans were the one exception; they were automatically granted asylum in most cases. But I think that some of these folks probably will be turned away for various reasons. But I think most of them will be held in detention centers, and their cases will be adjudicated. I could be wrong, but that's my guess.
Well, what can we do at the root of the cause, though, that you talk about the war on drugs?
Well, I mean, you could take a real radical resolve or resolution and start legalizing the drugs. Now, everybody's going to come at me and say, well, that's not going to happen. But, there are some serious conversations going on in each of these countries, and in other countries. Canada just legalized marijuana, to stop the black market where it is. I mean, you end the black market, you regulate and tax the drugs. What are your gangs going to be dealing in? Okay, they'll find prostitution, they'll find other illegal activities. But if you look at what is fueling these gangs right now, it is illegal drugs. It is heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and I feel like that's the most radical response. You can make a less radical response and maybe decriminalize, so you're not fueling military troops. And raids and the corruption that's going on, and maybe put money into resolving the social issues that are creating drug activity. But I feel like there has to be some sort of redirection on the whole war on terror. End the war on terror. I mean, end the war on drugs.
Michael Shindler, what's your opinion of the war on drugs?
To the extent that our drug policy affects like migration, geopolitics, and the domestic situation in other countries within our sphere of influence, within South America, we have a responsibility to reevaluate our existing policies and see what we can do to make it better, to make conditions better for everyone involved. So if we can, for example, reduce onerous policies on, for example, the regulation of marijuana, where the costs of legalization of marijuana to the health of the community aren't that high, then we should certainly do that. I'm not sure about doing that for some harder drugs that seem to have no legitimate social outlet, for example, like fentanyl or carfentanil, where the black market versions of this stuff essentially kill people if they have more than 4 grains of it, and that would be a bit much. So I wouldn't say legalize everything and that'll solve all our problems, but to the extent that we can legalize some things and solve our problems and other folks' problems and make this sphere better for all of us, I would say go ahead.
All right. Well, let's take some questions from our viewers. So, Carolyn Smith, why won't Trump stop talking about these bombs and blaming it on the media? Who would like to take that question?
Well, I'll take it. I mean, I feel like he was blamed first. And I hate to play this game of what they call it whataboutism. Well, each side says, well, what about this and what about that? But at first blush on Twitter yesterday, they were already blaming Trump. And like I said earlier, I feel like he got backed into a corner. And when Trump gets backed into a corner, he starts fighting. And so he starts blaming the media. And then it goes back and forth, back and forth. And you've seen this sort of whataboutism prevail. The right is saying, well, what about the guy who went and shot up all those Republicans who are practicing on on the baseball diamond? That's violent. About professors or conservatives that go to speak at college campuses and they have to have security because they're getting threatened. Bodily harm. What about that? But I feel like engaging in this whataboutism is just. It's sort of the new normal of today's politics, but I feel like I don't want to say Trump is using it or the other side is using it. It's a vicious cycle.
And it's unfortunate rhetoric. Does anyone else have an opinion? How can we change the rhetoric? How can we turn this on its head and have it become the message that I think so much of us badly want to hear, which is, can't we all just get along?
I really take exception to the idea that there's an equal amount of blame here between President Trump and his opponents. There's not. I mean, he's been overwhelmingly the fuel of all of this for the last 2 years. 80-90% of the charged rhetoric has come from him, and it's not an equal situation. So the way you change the situation is he's no longer president, and that's what the Democrats are going to try to do. But as long as he is president, as long as he is center stage, nothing will change.
Okay.
I mean, if there's still time to chime in, like this idea, why can't we all get along as being something ideal, doesn't seem to make sense to me. We're in democracy. Like, we're supposed to have a divisive, political atmosphere. We need the dialectic to move forward. This is a good thing, that where I feel like the people are so enraged.
Okay, right.
Well, that's a
that
positive
is all
spin.
for this
All right,
week.
and
I'm Heather Godwin, and thanks for watching The Square Circle. We'll see you next week.